All right, and we're live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this Tuesday's MakerDAO community call. It's January 26th. My name is Dave Utrobin, and I'm joined by Peyton Rose, who's going to be guest hosting the call with me. And we have quite a good one for you all today. So if you're new to the community call, typically we use this call to do one of two things. Either we go over the week at Maker, kind of just looking through the Maker Relay, which is a publication that's put up every Monday, and it's meant for any MakerDAO stakeholders, including voters, integrators, anybody who wants to know the current events happening around MakerDAO. We kind of go through that publication and update anybody on the call with kind of an ability to ask questions and kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive into the relay. And then the second thing we do on this call is we invite interesting guests, and that is actually what we're going to be doing today. So I'm going to hand it off to Peyton, and he is going to talk a little bit about our guest. And while he talks about our guest, I'm actually going to invite them on screen.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you, David, so much for doing these calls. Like, they're really exciting and a really cool way to keep up on what's going on in Maker. So thank you also to everyone who's joining us. Today, we're going to be talking about SourceCred, which is this really neat project that attempts to pay people and kind of measure them for their contributions. Here at Maker, we implemented the SourceCred algorithm on our forum as a way to try and encourage participation, encourage meaningful discussion. And basically every week we're sending out about 5,000 DAI, so about $5,000 worth of compensation for people that contribute to us on the Maker forum. And the way that compensation is broken down is up to the SourceCred algorithm. And luckily we got our SourceCred guys here to tell you more about that. So I don't want to take up too much of their time, but kind of high level summary, basically, we're looking to encourage people to contribute, pay them for their contributions, and really get people involved in this incredible Maker ecosystem. And we thought SourceCred was a great way to do that. Recently, we just updated one of the policy, kind of tweaked the algorithm for how we're keeping track of everyone's compensation. And that's going to be part of what we go over today. So without further ado, I guess we got Seth and Kevin here from SourceCred to talk about us. How about we go and have you guys introduce yourselves first, say what you typically do over at SourceCred. I know it's a long list, obviously, but give the people an idea what you're working on and who you work with, and then we'll get into specifics. So why don't we start with you, Seth?
Yeah, so I'm S-Ben on the forums. I do a little bit of everything over at SourceCred, but the main thing that I've been doing for the last few months is working on our integration with Maker and keeping the community updated on the forums and working with the SourceCred Maker working group to like create new features like the ones that we're presenting today.
Awesome. And Kevin?
Hey, y'all. I'm a developer at SourceCred. I've actually developed the feature that we'll be presenting on today, which is pretty cool. And been a long time Maker fan. I remember I was like just getting into Web3 when DAI was the first iteration, when Psi, what is now known as Psi, was released initially, which is pretty cool. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited you made the time for us today. So we're going to kind of start off talking about, I guess, some recent changes we did to the algorithm to add a new policy that kind of tracks people's contributions over on the forum, and kind of the ideas about why we made that change and what you can expect as well, I guess. So I guess I've been working on it with Seth, so I can help some points, but I kind of want to give it mostly to you, Seth, and if you need me to fill in or want some back and forth, let me know, but I'll give you the floor here.
So yeah, I also wanted to just jump in really quick here and shout out before you take over, Seth. I just wanted to shout out anybody who's here. Feel free to ask questions. There is a little ask questions button, and we will happily ask them on your behalf. So yeah.
Cool. Well, so like I've convinced the dev who built this thing to present it, and they've been good enough to come on, so they're going to do the presentation. But I can maybe answer some nitty-gritty details about SourceCred's relationship to Maker, if anyone has those.
Even better. Well, in that case, Kevin, floor is yours.
All right. Can you guys see my screen? Cool. All right. So, we are SourceCred, as you guys know, and we're presenting a couple different things today. We have these are all like new features that we have that we think might be useful for the Maker community, and we want to stress that like none of this is like this is just like to kick off the discussion. It's not to and these are just ideas. None of this has been really discussed at all, and we just want to like see what you guys think and if you guys want to implement any of this stuff, basically. So without further ado, like let's see how I can control this here. Oh, cool. So background. So Maker's been paying contributors for their activity on the forum, and it's been about 7 months of that, and it's been going pretty well so far. Since June, they've paid out about $69,000 in DAI to contributors through using SourceCred to figure out who to pay how much. And in September, the Maker voted to extend this trial for another 3 months. And then in November, Maker holders voted to fund an on-chain integration for SourceCred, and we are in the process of sorting that out right now, figuring out what that'll look like, and then actually performing the integration, I think, at some point after this period, soon after this period. So today we want to introduce like a new payout formula and a new feature that will, we think, help incentivize like activity around important discussions on the Maker forums. So first, the new policy is called recent, but let's talk about the old policy first. The current policy is 80% balanced and 20% immediate. Balance being SourceCred looks at credit earnings over all time and then allocates 80% of the available like distribution to all-time cred holders based on those metrics. And then 20% immediate is based on activity and cred earned over the last week. For those of you who aren't familiar with like the SourceCred lingo. This is good in the sense that early contributors reap rewards for getting in early, and it's also like quite stable. So like you build up like a long-term pattern of contribution, and you have some stability in terms of like your reward. But the negatives are that it's not responsive to new activity. If someone stops contributing over the last month, they're still going to see a relatively significant payout. And new contributors need to kind of like be active for a while to build up a substantial reward. So it's like there's like less immediate reward for starting to contribute. So the new payout policy is known as recent, and I can go into how it works, but basically it's an exponentially weighted decay in that it looks at, rather than so it's similar to immediate in that it looks at the last week, but then it looks at prior weeks and then exponentially decays the weight of that cred to calculate like a total reward over that like decay period, basically. Yeah, I just explained that. And so it's like a nice compromise between balanced and immediate, but it has like a nice bias depending on what you set the decay period, the decay weight at, to kind of incentivize new contributions while still like rewarding some track record of consistent contributions, basically. So here's like an example of how that might look. You can see how like if we look at like week 0 being like the current payout week, you will see basically how the total payout is calculated by taking like the area under each of these curves, if that makes sense. So you can see like with the decay rate of 0.8, basically nothing beyond week 3 is calculated in the payout. 3 weeks in the past is calculated in the payout, whereas like all the larger decay rates have, or smaller decay rates have longer tails for calculating the total payout for each individual. So these are like ideas for the new proposal, where we have 25% balance and 75% recent. So we're basically deprecating the immediate policy.
Kevin,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. So like we actually did just pull the trigger on this.
Oh, okay.
So like this will be implemented. This will be implemented this week.
Okay, great. That changes the inflection with which I speak about it, so that's good. All right, so like we said, like we've kind of shown, this is more responsive to new activity. It rewards new contributors, and it allows for like 1 month long breaks, in that like if you basically take a hiatus from contributing on the forums, you will still see a payout over like over 4 weeks before like the end of that tail catches up. And then so yeah, this has been trialed by OneHive and Metagame successfully, so there's like a proven track record for it. And some things to look out for: the established members will see drops if inactive, which might not be such a bad thing. And there's like a motivation change, in that people who are more incentivized to just collect a payout might show up more, rather than like people who have like a long-term interest in contributing to Maker. And there's an increased Sybil attack incentive, since it's easier to claim a reward in a shorter time span. So with this number of 25%, 25% balance, 75% recent, this is what the weekly payout change looks for. I'm not sure what is this like taken over the last week, Seth, or the week before?
This is actually for like the week before. Pros put this together for the post announcing proposing this payout change. But like this will look roughly similar to this week's.
Cool. And y'all will have access to this, I think, after, if it's not already present in a forum post somewhere. Yeah, so the next thing we are going to talk about is the new thing that I actually developed, which is the categories and weights tags. Weight modifiers for categories and tags. So this was that feature idea was developed within the Maker SourceCred working group, which seems to exist in this kind of transient space between Rocket Chat and Discord. Am I right on that, Seth, or is it mostly on Rocket Chat?
It's mostly on Rocket Chat, and I'll give props to Long for Wisdom. I believe this was his main idea.
So the way it works is you have each post on the Maker forums has a tag and potentially a category assigned to it. Even the uncategorized category is still technically a category, but you can assign weights to those, and those weights act as multipliers combined. Like they're multiplied together to create like a total multiplier for each like that is minted or created on the Maker forums. And combining those multipliers, we can incentivize discussion around specific topics. Here's a good example. So if the governance category has a weight of 1.2, and the signaling tag used to gather sentiment, as I imagine most, if not all of you know, has a weight of 5, they're multiplied together to get a total weight of 6. So each like on a post with this category and tag would carry 6 times as much weight as a as like a default weighted post, where it assumes that the default category and tag weight is 1.
I have a quick question. So the current weights that exist in the current implementation are primarily the likes that a post receives, and can you name some of the other ones just for context?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
What weights exist for the current implementation?
Yeah,
I know this is like an addition to the weights that are there, right?
So prior to this, all categories and signal and tags, are like defaulted to 1. And so every like on every post basically counts for the same, save for like in a SourceCred factors, like the user who liked it, or like that kind of thing, which doesn't affect weights per se. So all weights were 1 until this was implemented, basically. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Cool. And here's like another example that Seth thought up, where and this is basically like the configuration syntax from the JSON file where this is set up, where the default category weight would be set quite low to 1/1000th. Default tag weight is 1, and then you have these special tag weights of 1.2 for signaling and signal status accepted, where basically if Seth, do you want to talk about? I don't think I'm qualified to talk about the sig status accepted tag.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the workflow?
Yeah. I was just gonna try to interrupt. I want to put a giant disclaimer on this. This is basically just this feature is hot off the presses, and this is just the result of a couple tests I put together to illustrate how the thing works. The reason the category weight is 0.001 is basically just to try to drop everything to 0 except for signal request posts and accepted signal requests. So this will essentially show us what would happen if we only minted cred on signal requests and even more cred on the signal requests that get accepted.
I'm curious, just like from a strategy perspective, should signal status accepted like warrant more weight? I feel like even if it's not accepted, like it might still be a good thing that the person went through the work of putting it together and all that stuff. So regardless of whether it's accepted or not, and also like accepted and not accepted isn't really like the only format for signal requests. Some signal requests kind of just test for preference rather than yeses or nos. So I was curious about how that kind of plays into your thinking.
So yeah, I'm glad that you said that, because that's good information for me to know. This really is just me making up numbers, and I expect that once we start putting together an actual strategy, these numbers will change. And there's also other data that we could include, which maybe and like I definitely like to get some input from like the Maker governance experts on this too.
But if I could jump in, the basic idea behind it is by adding these tags, we would then encourage behavior. So like we'd encourage people to write signals that do get passed, right? And then SourceCred would pay them out more for it. So that's kind of the thinking from where the thought experiment begins.
Cool.
Is there going to be a post or like I guess even a signal request planned for thinking about the strategy behind these weights?
So there's definitely going to be a post announcing it. We were holding off a little bit because we just announced the change to the payout formula last week, and we wanted to give the community a chance to digest that and object. But it doesn't seem like there's
Has
any
anybody
objection.
objected?
Nobody has objected yet. And so we'll probably see a post announcing this feature soon. And then, and then, how, next steps from there, I guess we'll just work with the working group and see how they want to proceed.
Makes sense. Cool.
Yeah, I would say the cool thing is now we have this ability. So we're in that phase where we're testing it in the background and trying to see, all right, what makes sense. Long for Wisdom, our governance facilitator, was the one, as Seth mentioned, to come up with the idea of trying to mint more cred for governance, like essential actions, like making MIPS, making signal requests, things that need to happen in order for governance to evolve. And since our whole idea behind SourceCred is encouraging participation, it seems like those actions should maybe be encouraged a bit more. And this is a really neat way that Kevin came up with doing it. So kick it back over to you guys. Unless there's any other questions, now would probably be a great time. So feel free to voice anything.
While we're collecting questions, I do have like a thought. I really like the default category weight being set close to 0, because it kind of it makes certain categories not earn any credit at all virtually, which I think is a really important tool for controlling where we're trying to incentivize participation and action, and also kind of cutting the fat, because like, let's say collateral applications, right? MIPS collateral applications, you don't necessarily want to, reward people for submitting those, because a lot of times it's, some representative from that company or protocol, and they really are just posting once, and it's a completely different thing compared to a signal request, and maybe more community based and insider like discussions that might be happening. So I really like that design decision.
Before I move on, one thing I want to add to that thought is that if there is like a given week where no special categories exist, where everything is weighted, all posts are weighted, so no activity occurs on like an especially like incentivized category, posted in an especially incentivized category, like everyone will still get like proportionally minted rewards based on like the activity, based on activity relative to others. So like the fact that there's like a lower weight won't affect distributions, just to be completely clear on that. All right, we'll continue on. So with these configs, this is what the output looked like for all of these contributors. It's pretty interesting because you can get a pretty good idea of like who's kind of collecting a form of like seigniorage at this point by looking at this a bit.
Yeah, one thing about that chart is Utrobin has been spearheading like a lot of the signal requests, for example, and I see that his bar, which is like the biggest one right in the middle, is the biggest one right in the middle. So yeah, cool. It's really nice to see that practically.
Yeah, and also just a quick clarification. This is the percentage change, right? And so Utrobin is like benefiting from the fact that they've been very active with signal requests, but also that they have a relatively lower cred score than some of the like older contributors. So, kind of like, like a low market cap coin doesn't need as much capital to go up in percentage. Kind of seeing a similar thing there.
It's almost like a bonding curve, right? Or something like that, where I guess it's not really that, but it's like if you're new, you kind of establish yourself a bit of a foundation of cred, and then as you become an older contributor, it kind of tapers off and becomes more consistent, but then just is affected by like where your activity is, right?
Yes, and we've had very fun conversations about bonding curves in the past, but I will say no more.
I was just going to add, one of the things I found so interesting looking at that chart was that I expected it to, I guess, be more severe when tilting it towards just the signals. But I think that's kind of neat in showcasing how good of a job SourceCred does just at its kind of base layer of capturing the people that are really involved in governance. So really neat to see.
All right, and then this next example is, and like if we need to move along, like I think we can just let me know. But this next example is one where we want to incentivize discussion and activity, good productive activity around MIPS. It's pretty simple. Basically, just any post, regardless of category, with the MIPS tag will have the likes will count for 10, will be weighted 10 times as high.
So question, there is a MIPS tag, then there's also kind of tags within that category, like for RFC and conception and formal submission. What would that look like? That would look like it would go under tag weights, RFC, and then it would be a grade of 0 to 10.
So Kevin,
yeah,
just
I'm
maybe
not
like
quite as familiar with the tag process, so that would be helpful. That's Seth. I'll defer to you on this.
David, just just correct me if I'm wrong, David. The specialized MIPS tags will be applied in addition to the regular MIPS tag, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so yeah, Kevin, maybe that's the info you need.
Yeah. So
for example, in this link here, I'll post it in the chat. For example, in this link, it's MIP32. It's a peg stability module with compound mixed exposure. It has both the Maker Improvement Proposals tag as well as the RFC tag, and then it has kind of a couple other smaller, like the grayed out form tags. I don't know if, what the difference in like class of those tags is, but yeah.
Cool. Yeah, this is helpful. So I guess regardless of where what stage the MIP is in, like as long as it has that MIPS tag, it'll have 10 times each like will count for 10, will award 10 times as much cred. Or be weighted 10 times as high. Subtle but important distinction.
So if we wanted to incentivize, let's say specifically RFC tagged MIPS, then how would you change this configuration? You would remove MIPS and just replace it with RFC, or would you add both MIPS and RFC?
It depends on if you want to incentivize MIPS and then especially incentivize RFC.
Got it.
So if you wanted to, if for that example, I think an example config would be MIPS at like maybe 2, weight of 2, and then RFC tag a weight of 5.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
Awesome. And we have we have a graph that shows the output of that, which is quite interesting. It's interesting to see that Ultra Shupi is actually down on this one, even though, as you've said, they've been quite active. A lot of people are actually quite down on this.
Well, we can see here that the biggest gainer is Charles St. Louis, who is like the MIPS master around here, right? And so this shows that if you kind of specialize in one governance action, like you'll get rewarded for that or punished for that, depending on what we're doing. So that's why this example is not something that we would put in production per se. It's more just to kind of show how we can push the graph in one direction or the other.
And
so sorry, go for it.
I was also going to say, like, this isn't to say that like we can't incentivize both things, like we can't combine both examples to incentivize both MIPS discussion and signaling discussion as well.
In the MIPS boost example slide, if you can go back, I do have one more question about the config, so I can make sure that I'm understanding correctly. The default category weight, like, how does that exactly play into like the overall cred distribution? So in this example, it would be the default category would be MIPS, right? Maker improvement proposals. Yeah, sorry, go for it. I'm just trying to think it through.
Yeah, the default category weight is actually like, because we're not setting any specific category weights. So there's like another. I don't know if Seth has any examples of this. I don't think there are. But like in addition to like, so similar to like default tag weight, we have this example of tag weights where you can set weights for specific tags. We have a similar like config section for category weights where you can set weights for specific categories. So in this example, like default category weight doesn't do anything to affect cred distributions beyond. It doesn't do anything to affect cred distributions because this category weight would still be applied to the maker improvement proposals category, since there's no specific category set.
So like this is a little bit confusing because what's important is just the relative weights. And so if we want to emphasize MIPS, we just have to have the MIPS weight be a lot bigger than the category weights. And because all posts have a category, the way that I just set them effectively to 0 was to just set the default category weight to 0.0001. But in practice,
and basically,
yeah.
So
I was gonna say, so basically, the design is really heavily focused on tag weights, right?
Right. This example is. I'm just gonna show like just so it's like abundantly clear what this would look like. If we were to assign like a bonus weight to maker improvement proposals.
Because if correct me if I'm wrong here, but basically just setting the default so low allows us to then relatively give a lot more to specific categories should we choose to do that at any point in time.
Yeah. And so what Kevin's doing is they're adding a category weight for maker improvement proposal category, which will overwrite the default category weight. So all categories will have this low weight, except for maker improvement proposals category, which has 0.01.
It's one of the things that's a bit confusing about the forum, about like the discourse forums, is that they don't visually separate categories from tags on a post specific, on a topic specifically, like very well. So like if you just look at a topic, it's quite difficult, but it actually makes much more sense if you're looking at like the tags or categories focused UI. Just to be
that makes sense.
Clear on like clear up any confusion on that front, because if you look at the MIP32 topic, it looks like maker improvement proposals and MIPS are basically in the same kind of like feature space, and they're not. So okay, so this, because of that change, like this is a little bit different now. But this applies to like the prior config. So then this is like an example of the balanced, the both and example that I kind of mentioned, where we have signaling incentivized and MIPS incentivized. I think it's pretty, I think that there's some, I think there's a little bit of like,
So sorry, Kevin. I'm like triggering the developer because I'm just hacking up their config file. So like I just added this right before the call. This is not to be taken seriously. This is me just taking a stab at like generally incentivizing the important governance actions. So okay, we want to emphasize signal requests. We want to emphasize MIPS. And then the category weight is 1, so we're not dropping everything else to 0, basically.
Understood. So the way that this would basically work out of the gate is that all the categories are equally sort of weighted, and being weighted very, very low. And that, yeah, as I said earlier, like the where you want to incentivize is really how you manage the tag weights, right?
So there's the design space for this is quite large, and I think that it'll take a little bit of time to explore this and figure out what works best. It could be dropping some category weights to 0 effectively. It could be leaving them higher. You know, like it really depends. So I want us to like not take my example too seriously.
Fair enough. Gotcha.
Cool. And so this is an interesting visualization into how like most people would drop. Most contributors would lose a percentage of their cred if this was applied.
In one example, right? Rich Brown, who retired from the foundation and has been kind of taking a hiatus from Maker, has been almost completely inactive on the forums, and you could see he has that biggest bar down. So I imagine it's probably more of a function of inactivity than anything. Versus for example.
Yes, I mean inactive. Basically, I think since Rich stepped away, there's just been a lot of new activity around governance, and so the percentage of signal request posts or whatever that he interacted with is lower. Yeah.
Cool. All right, and I think that's it. So I guess I see Andy's comment, but any questions that you guys have?
This is kind of like probably a very difficult question to answer, so I apologize for asking it. But now that we have these tools, right, to mess with our weightings, like how do we figure out what works exactly? Like, what are your thoughts as the dev in terms of how do we analyze as we're tinkering with these various models? Like, what do we look into?
So I have like a skewed perspective as a dev because it's easy for me to think like, oh, just play with the instance, play with the MakerDAO instance and see what the MakerDAO community instance and see what comes out. But it's not as trivial as that. So like the way that I see this happening is like very interested community members who want to kind of incentivize certain things would say like could go in, apply these weights like Seth has, or there could be someone assigned to apply these weights like Seth has and produce like outputs. And then there could be like a topic. So basically like a meta topic on what like tags and categories should be weighted and what the desired. So first, like, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself, but like first there should be a discussion about like what exactly you want incentivized. And then there can be like a subsequent thread or maybe follow on discussion on the same topic about what the configuration would be that would best meet that community agreed like incentivization. Good question, Andy.
Yeah, so in the chat, Andy notes that his anecdotal observation is that signal requests often get a decent amount of cred already. So is this something we should really be considering boosting? And that's kind of speaks to the philosophical nature of, how do we want to use this tool? But one thing I guess I'll mention that I liked about your answer there, Kevin, is that it really does give us the freedom to say, hey, these are really open boundaries we can play with. So we can take a stab. We can say, hey, I think this will be good. And as the weeks go on, DAI is distributed to our contributors, people might say, hey, you know what? I don't feel this is fair. What if we tried it a different way? And it would be really easy to run some sims and see how it would change things.
One, now that the recent policy has been implemented for Maker, it's like the weights can be viewed as like ways to further incentivize like fresh takes from new people on new discussion as well. Where it's like, because now the idea of like you don't need to like bide your time in Maker to start seeing like a significant reward. If you come in and you have like a lot of good ideas, you'll be rewarded for that immediately. So these weights can now be a way to like further incentivize like, I guess, fresh perspectives as well, which is cool now that recent's being used.
I would also just add sort of like one thing to Andy's question. Like I think there's going to be disagreement on, of course, like on what needs more cred and what doesn't. For instance, I saw on the governance and risk channel the other day, Seth Ventures, saying, who wants to do a signal request for this? I'll give you some SourceCred DAI if you make a signal request, which I think reflects the fact that some people view signal requests as maybe kind of like more tedious, where they need the work, where they need more extrinsic motivation, whereas like, just spouting off your brilliant ideas about monetary theory, is like intrinsically enjoyable, right? But at this stage, I also just want to emphasize that like we're not making these judgments yet. Signal requests aren't necessarily going to be boosted.
And with that, I think we would definitely say we definitely invite perspective, because that's one of the neat things about the DAO is, everyone can really get in and give their opinion and work together to try and make something better. As a newer contributor myself, like I've been just blown away with how easy it is to get involved and be guided by some of the older community members. And I don't know, I would warn you that SourceCred is a very addictive passion. Once you fall into it, it's like a very cool algorithm. So, tread lightly, but also like if you fall down the rabbit hole, like you'll find me down there too.
Also, SourceCred does a great job of really tackling the apathy problem that a lot of decentralized governance-based systems are worried about, and having having voter apathy in actual votes is one thing, but also having apathy in public discussions about the things being voted on is like a whole other thing. And so from the second I personally saw SourceCred and Rich tackling it and getting you guys to do a forum implementation for MakerDAO, I was super hyped because again, this is a really, really, really great tool for the casual contributor, for the full-time contributor, and for the DAO as a whole. Yeah.
This is a bit of like a shill since we have the platform right now. But,
totally.
We want to see this idea of like cred rewards supplanting salary, in that if we can tune the balance well enough, like we can have the system where everyone is commission based, but they still have like a comfortable base income, so that incentivizes like strong behavior or strong contributions and consistent contributions. And that way, like the idea of like negotiating salaries, your salary depending upon like, 10 minutes of discussion or half an hour of discussion in a room one-on-one with someone, like that's gone. We want to see that disappear, where like the community decides what everyone's contributions are worth as opposed to like a few people. So that's kind of like a vision that we have for this tool.
Yeah, although I would say that's a long-term vision. The algorithm, just so everyone's clear, like SourceCred isn't like ready to take on like what the domain teams or core units are doing. It's sort of blind to like a lot of labor, but yes, this is the long-term vision.
I asked it in the chat, but I might as well repeat it out loud for the recording. But I'm curious what the mode payout right now is, which is like the most common level of payout, and then also like the overall average of payout, and also how many people are actually opted in. Because I know that for the Maker implementation, you actually have to opt in order to like get the payout. So would love some metrics.
In the last distribution, 62 contributors received DAI. And I'm going to drop a link to the Maker instance showing the amount that's been distributed so far. My computer's being nice and slow.
And I guess worth noting, one thing that would kind of mess with the averages is we have increased the weekly payout as we've been going along with it. So may not be the best representative number, but kind of asking for the different statistical factors there makes a lot of sense to give people an idea kind of what it's doing for people.
Because I was wondering if it's going to supplant like salaries, for example. What does a monthly like payout do to like an average person? You know, the average person. So, so does one cred map to like one DAI here?
There's no like fixed cred per DAI. It's based on relative activity. So like in a given, I guess like if we look at like the recent policy, in a given like week, the policy looks at the total amount of cred generated and then uses that to kind of like approximate the pot and then proportionally awards DAI based on each contributor's proportion of cred at that point.
Understood. Got it.
Yeah. So like, and this is just one way to do it. We've discussed having like setting a target DAI per cred in like internally in SourceCred. Although our DAI is grain, they're like just literally a million directions you can slice this. Kevin?
And I also want to add that like even though like that might sound unfair on a week-to-week basis, but the whole reason you have like the decay is to catch those under-rewarded contributions, and also balanced will also make up for any long tail unrewarded cred as well. So that's all covered basically over time. So over time, like all cred is equal.
Yeah, it would obviously also depend on that weekly distribution. Like right now, you could think we're spending about 20,000 DAI per month. So that's 240K a year. Probably not enough to really support too many salaries at that level. However, as people get more comfortable, as people get more into the idea of SourceCred, if we were able to increase that level, all of a sudden it becomes something that can support that. But right now we're using a relatively small amount of DAI, but finding that it is still incentivizing people to really get on the things. And looks like Seth had something to add to that.
Yeah, just real quick. And David, let me know if we're going over time here. I know we've been talking a while.
No, okay, you guys cool. have the whole call. Yeah, don't worry about it.
As far as scaling up SourceCred, I just wanted to add a couple points. One is that as you increase the payouts, you're going to increase the reward to Sybil attacks. Right now, we're very comfortable, in part because we implemented a feature for Maker where you cred isn't minted until you gain a higher trust level in discourse. So people brigading, like their shitcoin don't mint any cred actually. But if we went up to if we're distributing $1 million or something, and someone like the incentive might be strong enough for people to start doing that. So then there's that to consider. And then I forgot my other point. But, yeah, there's more issues to come up if we want to expand it. Kevin?
My technical brain was tickled by that feature, because like one of the cool things about SourceCred is like once a contributor reaches that trust level, and I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure this is true. Every contribution that they've had before they reach that trust level has gone back. They get cred for all those old contributions. So it's not like you're doing work for free. You'll eventually get rewarded for all those things. And then you'll have like a back payout because of all this unrewarded cred up to that point. Seth?
Another nice like sort of like feature of that is if you help a new contributor and like you're getting likes from them because you're commenting on each other's stuff, those likes won't mint any credit first. But as that person's cred score and trust level increases, those old likes turn on, start minting cred, and you're going to get a boost that's kind of like it's almost like a recruitment bonus, if you will.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I have
David?
a question. So I know that right now there is a MIPS set that is being proposed called the Core Unit Framework, and it's meant to kind of make it easier to have teams that are like responsible for certain functions. And I was curious whether the SourceCred working group at Maker is planning or considering creating a core unit to manage the SourceCred implementation.
Yeah, I've been following that. So we had a MIP back in November where the MKR holders voted to fund an integration directly with the protocol. So people will be paid DAI directly using SourceCred from the protocol. How, like, the details of that, I think are still a little up in the air. I'm closely following this core unit, MIP set, and also the work with the KEG module. I think what it could look like in the medium term is basically Maker has like a representative from the community who can like manage the SourceCred instance and interface with SourceCred. SourceCred will figure out a way to like more trustlessly transmit the scores and payouts to Maker. And then I could imagine SourceCred becoming like a core unit, or if that doesn't work, something else to get paid directly from the protocol. That's my sort of just 20,000 foot view right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and it has to be 20,000 feet because obviously, like, the core unit framework isn't even like formally ratified yet. It's still in request for comment, and on top of that, yeah, there's a bunch of different ways that payouts can go. They can come straight from the protocol. They can work like a grant from the protocol, and then the core unit does the distribution themselves. Yeah, there's a ton of paths, but yeah, it's cool to know that you've been thinking about it, Ben.
Yeah, totally. And it's also very exciting, the idea that people could be paid directly from the protocol via an algorithm. That's a pretty big step forward in terms of decentralization.
I feel like we're in the future, man.
Super exciting.
Been waiting for this day my whole life.
So looking at the time here, we are running up against it. So one last call for questions. If there is anything you've been wondering, like, shoot it off. If we're not able to answer it here, we can connect with you afterwards. But thank you guys so much for coming on and like spending so much time to make this happen. I know for at least me personally, it was a big part of me falling into that Maker orbit was saying, oh my gosh, I made $50 for that first post I made. Like, what? Maybe I need to come here every day.
That's actually an amazing testimony, Peyton.
But now you're stuck with me, so.
No, that's a good thing. Which, by the way, just to shout out Peyton, Peyton has been involved with just a number of different working groups and things at MakerDAO since he started contributing, and he's really been like, if we had like a reward for the Rockstar Community Member of the Month, like, it would go to Peyton, hands down.
I would defer it to at least 3 other people, but like, that's really sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's why you would get it.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I'll +1 Peyton's Rockstar nomination. They've been going down they've been thoroughly source pilled as we say, and they've been really good interfacing with SourceCred and understanding everything.
If you want to like learn more about the team at SourceCred, we have a call in an hour, by the way. Now we're getting a little over shilly here, but like come hang out with us.
Over shilly is welcome. So yeah, throw the link in the chat. Definitely do that. I'll even throw it in Maker chat as well.
Let me pull that up.
What's the call about, by the way? It's just general.
It's a community call. Basically, it's centered around new people who want to ask questions, and we try to answer them. Nice.
And then Andy's asking, what is that hat?
It's a story. I'm basically a big baseball nerd, and this is like a minor league team, and sometimes they do like special hats. It's a picture of a sandal for those of you who don't know. So, thank you. Yeah, I thought it was like delightfully obscure and bizarre. So of course I had to get it at that point. So, yeah.
Sweet. Well, with that, feel free to make any ending remarks. But I just want to say thank you both for coming on the call. This was wonderfully fun and informative, and makes me hype about Maker, about the forums, about contributors. So yeah, props to you guys.
Thanks for having us. This is a lot of fun. We obviously there's a lot going on in both of our communities, and we could geek out about it forever. So it's cool to have this space.
Right on. And Peyton, thank you so much for co-hosting.
Happy to hop in.
Done. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I'm going to hit the end broadcast button then, since I don't see any questions in the chat. And so, yeah, have a great Tuesday, everyone.